Good morning. Today, we will look at how to calculate quantities of various items of construction in a frame structure. Now, when we say frame structure, there are several types of frame structures, but the most commonly used frame structure is the RCC frame structure. And we are going to look at only RCC frame structure today. Obviously, the other kind of frame structure which is often used is the steel frame structure. But finding out the quantities of the steel frame structure is quite simple because all the quantities of the structure itself are calculated as a weight of the steel that is used. And this is generally given by the structural designer when he sends in the structural design for the building. So you just have to copy those quantities and put them. That is all that needs to be done. But when it comes to calculating quantities for an RCC structure, it's a different ball game. It requires some kind of skill. And therefore, we are going to spend the next 10-15 minutes trying to understand how that is done. Obviously, when you start finding out quantities for any structure, you start with excavation. But I'm not going to talk about excavation, BCC, etc., which are items which we have already covered in earlier MOOCs. I'm only going to concentrate on RCC items. So the first item of construction in an RCC structure that we have to find quantities of is RCC footings. Now, you all know, and we have studied, that there are three kinds of footings that you usually come across. The simplest one is the pad footing, which is simply a rectangular pad at the bottom and the column directly rests on it. The second one, which is not very common, is a stepped footing, where you have a series of rectangular prisms placed one on each other till we reach the top, on which the column in the plinth will rest. It's almost like a stepped pyramid. This is not very common because it requires a little bit of skill to execute, and it's not necessary to make a step pyramid for the footings. The simpler method, which is most commonly used, is the sloped footing or the sloping footing. Now, let us try and find out how the quantities are calculated for the sloped or sloping footing. If you look at this sloped footing, clearly it has two parts. The bottom is like a pad. It has a rectangle as the base, and it's a rectangular prism. So finding out quantity of that part of the footing is pretty easy. All that you need to do is take the bottom, the size of the bottom, and multiply it by that little height. It is the second part which sits on top of this pad that requires a little bit of calculations. Now, what is that shape? It is actually a truncated rectangular pyramid, or it's a rectangular pyramid where the top is chopped off. Okay. And then the column sits on that chopped off part or the truncated part of the pyramid. Now, how do you find out the quantity of this part of the footing? For that, you will have to refer to some mathematical formula. Anyway, I will quickly give it to you. There are three different elements that you have to find out the sizes of. The first one is the bottom rectangle, and we have to find out the area of the bottom rectangle. Then there is the top rectangle, that you get when the pyramid is truncated or the top is chopped off. Okay. And the third dimension that you need to know is the height of this truncated pyramid. Remember, this is the height after the pyramid is truncated and not before it was truncated. Okay. So let's call the bottom rectangular area or area of the bottom rectangle as A1, the top rectangle as A2, and small h as the height of this part of the truncated pyramid. If you have these three things with you, you will be able to calculate the volume of this rectangular pyramid. The formula is very simple. It is h divided by 3 or h by 3 and then into bracket a square, or sorry, not a square, a1, that is the area of the bottom rectangle, plus a2, which is the area of the top rectangle, and then plus under root of a1 into a2. I will repeat again. It is h by 3, where h is the height of the pyramid, into bracket a1, area of the bottom rectangle, plus a2, which is area of the top rectangle, and plus under root a1 into a2. Now you don't have to really mug this formula up. It is available everywhere in the books also. So even if you forget, don't worry. You can always go and look it up. So this is the formula to calculate the volume of the top part of the sloping pyramid, of the truncated pyramid, or the sloping part of the footing. And once you do this, then you get the total volume of the pyramid, because you have to calculate the volume of the pad at the bottom and then the truncated pyramid at the top. Total these two up and you will get the volume of the pyramid, truncated pyramid, or trapezoidal footing as it is called. Now, getting these sizes is also not simple, because the first size is available in your schedule itself. The lower rectangle, its size is available in the schedule. The height is also available in the schedule, because it normally footings, when they are drawn, they show two dimensions, the capital D and the small d. The capital D is the total depth of the footing. The small d is the depth of the lower part of the footing. The rectanguloid part of the footing is small d. So what you have to do to get h is deduct small d from the capital D, and you will get the dimension of the height of the truncated pyramid. So this is also pretty simple. What takes a little bit of understanding is how do you get the size of the top rectangle. Now you all know that the column in plinth sits on top of this footing, and after the footing is cast, one has to erect the shuttering or centering for the column, right? The formwork for the column has to be done, and then you can construct the column. So this placing of the formwork requires certain space on either side of the column, because the planks or the shuttering, whatever material you're using, that itself will be about 20 to 25 mm in thickness on either side. And then beyond that, there is something called as a rough ground, or a little piece of wood which is nailed to the top surface of the footing. And then this plate or the shuttering material that you're using to erect the column is nailed to that little piece of wood which is fixed to the footing on all four sides. All this requires some space, some flat space. And usually the other reason why we need the space is sometimes even during construction, the column centers can shift. When you cast the footing, after a while when the columns have to be erected, sometimes the footing may shift a bit. So there has to be enough space for adjusting the center. So taking all this into consideration, what you need is about 75 mm of space on all four sides of the column, which has to be a flat surface. So in other words, what it means is that if you want to get the size of the top rectangle, what you need to do is take the size of the column which sits on top of this footing and add 75 on all sides. So that is 75 and 75, 150 mm on for both sides. That means width and breadth of the column. You add 150 mm. So if your column is say 200 by 300, the top of this footing will become 200 plus 150, that is 350, and 300 plus 150, that is 450. So that will give you the size of the top rectangle. Once you know how to calculate this, then getting the quantities of footings is very simple. Next, we have columns. Now, how do you calculate the volume of columns? Obviously, you have the size of the column given in schedule, and you must know the height. Now, here, as far as height up to plinth is concerned, it is pretty easy for you to find because you know the total excavation depth and you deduct the thickness of PCC and thickness of the footing itself, the height of the footing. What remains is up to plinth is the height of the column in plinth. So when it comes to floor columns, there are two things that you have to remember. Number one, though column numbers will remain the same for all floors, the sizes of column may differ from floor to floor. Usually they get reduced as you go up. Therefore, it makes sense to calculate the quantities of columns floor wise. Instead of calculating the quantity of column from plinth to the top, you calculate it for every floor separately. Even though in the schedule of quantities, the item is only one, RCC columns. You will first calculate quantities for ground floor, for first floor, for all every upper floor separately, and then add it up. Okay, there's an advantage in doing this, which you will realize when the construction actually starts, because you have to also do billing, check the bills. That is where this comes in very handy. Okay, as I told you, sizes of columns are already given in the schedule, so getting those sizes is not difficult. What is important is how do you calculate the height of the column. Now remember that there is a specific hierarchy as to which items of RCC will have precedence over the others. Now in this case, the slab has precedence over the column, which means when you calculate the height of the column, it has to be calculated up to the slab only. So usually we take the unfinished slab to unfinished slab dimension and deduct the thickness of the top slab. So it is actually the dimension from the top of the bottom slab unfinished to the bottom or the soffit of the top slab unfinished. That is the height of the column. So usually you have floor heights are given. Let's say that the floor height is 3 meters. You just look at the top slab. What is its thickness? Suppose it is 150 mm. Then your column for that floor would have a height of 2850 because 3000 minus 150. That's how you calculate the height of the. It's a fairly simple calculation. Next, we have the beams. Now, we have already seen in an earlier book that beams are calculated from column face to column face. That means the distance between the two columns is the length of the beam that you will take wherever, whether it's a ground beam, a plinth beam, or a floor beam. Sometimes beams may rest not on a column but on a beam. So in such a case where a beam rests on the beam on either one side or on both sides, there instead of the column face, you take at the length from the beam face where on which the new beam is resting. How do you calculate the other two sizes? Width of the beam is also given in the schedule. The depth of the beam is also given in the schedule. Now here you have to be careful because slab has a precedence over beam. Therefore, when the beam depth is given, it includes the thickness of the slab, which has to be deducted. So if the schedule says your beam size is 200 by 400, meaning it's 200 mm wide and 400 mm tall or deep, then let's say that there is a slab resting on it with 150 mm thickness, then the quantity of beam will be calculated as 200 mm by not 400 but 400 minus 150. So 200 by 250 will be the size of the beam, and you will multiply it by the length from column face to column face on which the beam is resting. So this is the important thing to remember when you are calculating quantity of the beams. Here again, it makes sense to calculate quantities of beams separately floor wise because the dimensions may change. In fact, the top slab on which there is only the terrace, the beam sizes will be smaller. Why will they be smaller? Because that beam is not going to support the load of the any wall on top. There are no walls on top. While as the floor beams that we have or the lower floors, they have to support the weight of the blockwork or brickwork or masonry also on top. Also, the live loads for terraces are lower than live loads for floors that you use. So therefore, usually the beams, the topmost set of beams, the sizes will be smaller. So we have to remember that. The next item that we have to look at are slabs. Now remember, you may have slabs of different thicknesses, and slabs with different thicknesses are different items of construction. So instead of simply having, let's say, RCC footings, RCC columns, RCC beams, you will have an item which will say RCC slab 100 mm thick, RCC slab 120 mm thick, RCC slab 150 mm thick, like that. Now, the main difference here is that slabs are not calculated as a volume, but they are calculated as area in square meters. So for different thicknesses of slabs, you will have to find out the area. Now there could always be slabs of different thicknesses in the same building. And in that case, there will be an overlap. Suppose there is a beam on one side, there is 150 mm thick slab, on the other side is 120 mm thick slab. So how do you calculate, or in which area do you include that little overlap or area on top of the beam? Obviously, it is always included in the thicker slab. If there is 150 mm and 120 mm, two sets of slabs, and if there's an overlap, while calculating the area for the slab, it is the 150 mm thick slab which will be calculated from the outer ends of both beams. That overlap area or area under the overlap will be included in the 150 mm thick slab and not 120, because 150 is more than 120. All right. Also, one must remember that in case you have such a situation, the beam at the bottom will also have its dimension calculated after deducting the thicker of the two walls. Okay. Now there could be also sloping slabs. It may be a roof slab which is sloping. Now, what are the precautions that you have to take? First of all, you must know that the area you cannot calculate directly from the plan, because the width may be proper in the plan, but when it comes to the length of the slab, you will have to go to the section and take that dimension. Okay, so that's the first thing about sloping slabs. Second thing, very important, there can be a ridge where two sloping slabs will meet at the top. Can you imagine that the length, if calculated from the top of the ridge or at the soffit, the length will be different. The length on the top surface will be more than the length at the bottom surface. Okay, so what length do you take? Obviously, you take the average length, or you take the length at the center of the slab. That is to be calculated for taking quantities. And then another very important point which one must remember is that the slab will have an overhang. It will project out beyond the building line. When you have flat slabs like terraces, etc., usually those slabs don't extend out of the outside of the building line. Here, what is going to happen is that in order to form eaves, or in order to ensure that water doesn't drip and to afford some kind of a protection for the walls, you will have the sloping slabs which extend out as overhangs. And one must not forget to take that length into consideration. Sometimes architects forget to do that. So that is as far as sloping slabs are concerned. Some of you may be wondering, what are we doing about the steel? Are we calculating steel separately? No, because steel quantities are again uh, a different item of construction. There are total structural steel used as reinforcement or rebars is also calculated in weight, and it is calculated separately for the total building. Then there are certain other items of construction which are done in RCC, which are also included in our buildings. The most common ones are lintels. You know how to calculate quantities of lintels. There are chhajjas, which are overhangs, and there are pardis. Here again, chhajjas and pardis are not calculated as volume, unlike the lintel. They are calculated as area quantity in square meters. Now, when you calculate chhajjas, you have to calculate them from the outer edge of the building, from the outer face of the wall. So only the part which is projecting is calculated. Okay. The part which is inside along with the lintel is not to be calculated. And then when you calculate the pardi, you have to deduct the thickness of the chhajja. So again, there is a very well set hierarchy. Lintels have the first preference, then the chhajjas, and then the pardis, or the vertical elements that we put. There could be RCC staircases. We know how they are calculated. Very simple. You have to simply calculate them as number of steps. There could be lofts in the kitchen, overhangs. These again, as I told you, if there's a loft, the loft in the kitchen, if it is a projecting loft, it will be, there will be some sort of a lintel or a beam from which it will come out, project. So again, you only calculate that part which is projecting and not the lintel. So these are some of the RCC items. There are shear walls, but again, calculating quantity of shear walls is very simple. Now, what happens to the superstructure in an RCC frame building? Obviously, all other quantities have to be calculated in a similar fashion, except for brickwork. Brickwork has to be, the length will be from column face to column face. Heights will be total height minus the depth of the beam. So the method is very similar, and I don't think I would want to revisit all that again. So you know how to calculate quantities of walls, openings, flooring, plaster, internal, external, etc., etc. All other items remain the same when it comes to the superstructure. So with this, we conclude how to calculate quantities of various items of RCC structures.